So in the last session, we started with object-oriented programming in Python, and there we have seen how to define a class, how to define an object of a class, then what do you mean by class variable, what do you mean by instance variable, then how to define the methods in a class, then how to define a class method, how to define static method. So we have seen all those stuff in the last session. And we have seen what is the use of decorator, how to go for the class method, how to make use of a decorator at the rate class method, then a decorator at the rate static method, then what is the use of static method, when do you use the static method. So I'm sure that you all must be knowing that part, and now it's high time to move forward. Now it's high time to learn more about object-oriented programming in Python. So now today we'll be starting with a very important concept related to any class in any programming language, and that is your constructor. So today we shall be talking about constructor, and then we shall be talking about inheritance. And if the time permits, then we'll be talking about exception handling also. Fine. So let us start with constructor. And before we start with constructor, let me know what do you mean by constructor. I think in the last session also at the end we started with this, and we had a very brief discussion on a constructor. So let us have it again, and then let us see how to define a constructor in a Python class. So what is a constructor? In any programming language, when you have a class, so we do have a constructor in a class. So what is a constructor? What is the use of a constructor? Please let me know. Meanwhile, I'll be going for a new file. I call it Session7.py. I think it's 8. We'll see it. Okay, please let me know what is constructor. There is no answer from your side. We shall be talking about constructor and inheritance. Yes, what is constructor? Any student? You can unmute a mic and you can tell me the answer. You can just post your answer into the chat box. Or if you want, then I can call any student of my choice. Yes. Constructors are used for instantiating an object. Any other student? A method in the class that is called when a new object is created. Okay, yes. Any other way of defining a constructor? Constructor is a default method which is called when class object is created. Okay, that is also right. Fine. So constructor is a special method. Constructor is to initialize, assign values to the data members of the class when an object of class is created. Fine, that is also good. So in short, a constructor is a method in a class which is called whenever the object of that class is created or whenever the object of that class is declared. Okay. So whenever you declare the object of a class, whenever you create an object of a class, the constructor of that class is called for that object so that the object can be initialized so that the object instance variable can have some value. Okay, so that is the main purpose of a constructor. At times we say it is used to instantiate the object. That term is wrong. It is used to initialize the object, or you can say it is used to instantiate the class. When you have the term instantiation, so the term instantiation is associated with class, not with object, because instantiation means uska instance create karna. And what is an instance? Instance is an object. Okay, so you cannot instantiate an object. We instantiate a class and we initialize the object. So the initialization of an object is done through constructor, or you can say instantiation of a class is done through constructor. Okay, so let us define one class, a class person, and let us have something into this class. Now, what can be done that I don't want to go for any class variable right here. I will be going for instance variable. In the last session, what we saw that we have created the instance variable in the method of a class, in a regular method of a class. Generally, it is a practice and it is a recommended practice to have the instance variable inside the constructor of a class. I repeat, to have or to initialize the instance variable inside the constructor of a class. And class is a constructor is a function. We all know a constructor is a method or a function. So to define a method or a function, we'll be making use of a def keyword. Okay. And then in Python, whenever you want to declare the constructor of a class, what do we do in C++ and Java? How do we define the constructor of a class? Come on, tell me fast. In C++ and Java, how do you indicate that this method of a class, this function of a class is a constructor method? How do you indicate that in C++ and Java? Are you getting my question? Name is same of class. Absolutely right. Okay, so Anas is right. Alfia is also right. Same name as of class. So whenever in C++ and Java, you have the member function in a class which has the name same to its class, then such a member function is a constructor. So that is the indication to the compiler that see this member function or this method is a constructor in this class. Likewise, in Python, for the Python interpreter to know that this method is a constructor of a class, there is a syntax, there is a rule, and that rule says that the constructor name would be always init. I repeat, the constructor name would be always init. Okay. So let it be any class, let it be anywhere, but in Python, whenever you want to declare or whenever you want to define the constructor of any class, the constructor name would be init, always. Let the name of a class be anything, but the name of its constructor would be always init. So this simplifies our task. And it is not only init, but it is dunder init. What is dunder? Double underscore. Double underscore. So before the word init, we have double underscore, and after the word init, we have double underscore. Okay, so this is called dunder init. How do we pronounce it? Dunder init. And dunder means double underscore. So you can read it like that, double underscore or dunder init. Fine. So now, here, after writing def, I would be saying double underscore init, double underscore, like this. So this becomes my what? Constructor of a class. Now, since this is a constructor of a class, which is a method of a class, So by default, it must be having at least one argument, and that argument will be always referring to the object which has been created. Okay, so it will be like this. Now inside this, whatever your way you want to define your instance variable, you can define. For example, if I talk about person, so a person can have name. So I would be saying name equals to something, and person can have a class. Person can have a class. So no, sorry, person can have address or contact number. So I can say address equals to something, and then I can say mobile or contact equals to something. Fine. Now, after this, I can have another function to get the values or to get the properties. I can call it get val, and this would return me the properties. So name, comma, address, comma, mobile. And here ends my person class. So then my main function, and inside this main function, I will be declaring the object of the person class of p equals to person, and then I would like to get the value. So print p dot get val. Done, and then I would say if the name of my module is done the main, and only I would be calling the main function. Let us try to execute this code. Sorry, we forgot. It should be at least one, that is self, and I should write here self dot name and self dot address and self dot mobile. It says the person object has no attribute name. Now what's happening here that this init is getting called over here, and let me say in init. The message in it and exception, and the exceptions are what? It has no attribute name. Sorry. You should point out the mistake, na? I'm doing here some silly mistakes. It should be what? It should be self dot name. Unless until I write like this, how it would become my instance variable. If I do not associate it with my instance, it will not become an instance variable. Na? So now see here. In init, and then the output is what? We do not initialize any name. We did not initialize any address and mobile number. That's why it is giving all blank. And now if I initialize it to something, say Ahmad, and then say address as Mumbai, and then the mobile number as 98989898. So yes, name is Ahmad, address is Mumbai, and mobile number is this. Okay. So this is how the constructor can be used to initialize the object of a class. So now if you see here, so what we are doing, we are creating the object of a class over here, p equals to person. The moment you do this constructor will be called. Fine. This constructor will be called, and when this called, is displaying in init, and then we are initializing the instance variable. So self.name equals to Emma, self.address equals to Mumbai, self.mobile equals to this. And then in the getVal function, we are returning these values. So after initializing the object P over here, then we are displaying the values associated with the object P. So print P dot getVal. Okay. So in the output, we are getting this. Output as name as Ahmad, then address as Mumbai, and mobile number as this. Okay. Is there any query into this? Now, what if I want to initialize the object with the sent values or with the passed values? What I mean to say here, I am initializing the name as Ahmad. Okay, it's a constant name. Likewise, address is also a constant string. Mobile is also fixed. Now, suppose I want to send some values from here. So whenever I send some values, a value should be passed over here. How can I do that? Yes. How can we do that? I want to pass some values to the constructor so that an object will be initialized for those passed values. Instead of initializing the object with the constant value, we want to initialize the object with the passed value. So one object can be initialized with one value, another object can be initialized with another value. Otherwise, if I declare one more object over here, so that object would also be initialized with the same value. So P and P1 both would be having the same values, no difference at all. So if you see here, the object P and object P1, both are having the same value, exactly the same value, no difference at all. So what if I want to initialize the object with different values, with the passed values? How that can be done? Chalo, come on fast. How do you do that in C++ and Java? Yes. How do you do that in C++ and Java? I want to initialize the object with different values, different objects with different values. Parameters. So what we'll be doing? We'll be passing the parameters to what? Parameters to constructors. So in C++ and Java, what do? We have multiple constructors. One, the default constructor without any values, without any arguments. Then we have a parameterized constructor. So we have another function with the same name, but then we pass the arguments. We pass the parameters to the constructor. So that we do in C++ and Java. But let me tell you, in Python, you can have only one constructor in a class. I repeat, you can have only one constructor in a class. It means that when I am having this init method in my class person, I cannot have one more init method. I cannot have like this. Self, comma, then I want to pass name, I want to pass address, and then I want to pass mobile. If I try to do this, I cannot do this. Let's try. Self dot name equals to n, and self dot address equals to a, and then self dot mobile equals to n. Let's try to do this. Generally, this is how we do it in C++ and Java. But now I am declaring one object P as a object of a person class without any parameter, and P1 as an object of the same person class, but with some values. I initialize it with the name Sachin and address as say and then the mobile number as 9999, something like this. Let us try to execute this. So we are getting some exception. We are getting some error. And what does the error says? Type error init missing 3 required positional arguments, NaN. So though you have a constructor in a class with those positional arguments, still it is saying that it is missing. Okay. What happens that the moment it gets the first this dunder init, the interpreter fixes this as the only constructor in your class. Done. Then whatever definitions you have after this, again for the same init, they are not considered. So in short, for a Python class, you can have only one constructor. I repeat, you can have only one constructor. Okay. So now the question is how to make that single constructor something like a multiple constructors. How to convert a single constructor to be called when you pass no argument and to be called when you pass some argument. How can you do that? Yes. Come on, fast. How can you do that? Let me know. What do? I take this as comment first init, and now I have this init. Good solution by Aditi Patil, default argument. Now let me show this. I have only this constructor. So we'll be getting an error over here without argument. Let's see. So yes, we are getting an error, type error init missing 3 required positional arguments. We have error. What can be done? We can make this arguments as default arguments. It means what? If a value is passed, then fine. And if the values are not passed, then have some default values. For example, nothing. Like this. And here I would be saying none. In fact, here also I can say none. Better to have them as none. Now let's see this. So done. What happened? That for the first object, when you do not pass any argument, so the first object is initialized with none values. And for the second object, when you have passed the arguments, the second object is initialized with the passed value. Okay, so that we can see here. With no values, and the second object is initialized with this values. And this we have done with this. How we did this? With the help of a constructor, wherein we have the default argument. Is yourself, which is default, which should be there, I mean to say. Then the three instance variables, three values for the three instance variables. And if the values are passed, so those values would be used. If no values are passed, then we'll be setting them as none. Okay. So this is how you can handle. Now, suppose I got one more case, and that case is something like this. A P2 object, and I want to initialize it to P1. And now let me display the values of P2. Let's see what happens. Okay, so it's working very well without any issue. And in the constructor itself, or the here itself, what we can do, we can also pass the address of self. So ID of self. So let the ID also or the address also get displayed over there. We would come to know few interesting things. Fine. So this is the address of my first object. This is the address of my second object. And this is the address of my third object. So can you see what's happening? Here, your second object and your third object, they are same. The only point is what? Okay, they are having different names, P2 and P3. But they are referring to the same memory location. They are referring to the same memory location. So the object P2 is having this address and the object P3 is also having this address. What if I want to do something like this? Instead of let P2 be there, and now I go for another object, say P4, or let me do one thing. After all this stuff, after displaying all these things, my object P is having no values. So I want the copy of P. So let me say P equals to P1. Let us see. And then I P. Let's see what happens. Now see what's happening. The object P was first initialized to none with some address. Then object P1 was created with the given values, had this address. P2 was created as a copy of P1. Yeah. So P2 was created as a copy of P1. When P2 was created as a copy of P1, and when you displayed the P1.getWell, so if you see here, this is my P1, and it is having the same address as P2. And then this is my P1, and then this is my P2, which is having the same address as P1. And then what we did, we reinitialized object P with the values of P1. So we are writing P equals to P1. And then we are printing the values of P. So the moment we printed the values of P, so we got this. So earlier P was having this, none, 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 and this address. But then when we wrote P equals to P1, at this point, P equals to P1. So at this point, what happened? The values of P1 got copied into P, and then P also had the same values as P1. But this is not copying the values of P1 into P. Instead, what the interpreter did, interpreter changed the reference of this P. What I mean to say, interpreter changed the address of this P, and now P also having the same address as P1. P also having the same address as P1 over here. And that's why it is giving you the same values. So it means that here it is only changing the references. It is not copying the entire object P1 into the object P. They are not two different memory locations. So there is only one memory block which is having the values Sachin, Navi Mumbai, and number 999, so on. And to that memory block, earlier P1 was pointing, and then P2 also started pointing to the same block the moment we wrote P2 equals to P1. And then finally, the moment we wrote P equals to P1, at this point, at this moment, P also started pointing to the same block. So now your three objects are pointing to the same block, and that's why all the three objects are having the same reference or the same address. P1 is having this address, P2 is having this address, and now P is also having the same address. So all are pointing to the same. Okay. So this is about the references, and this is about how can you have a single constructor in your class which is handling all different possibilities. Okay. An object without arguments, it is handling the creation of an object with arguments and so on. Now in Python, we all know that your function can be defined with n number of arguments. I repeat, your function can be defined with n number of arguments. Okay, with the help of star args. So that also we can we can exploit that also over here. So I can have something like that. So let me write it over here. For example, what if I write star arg over here, and then I can say arg of 0, arg of 1, arg of 2. Tuple index out of array. In that case, I think this is not required. Self. One minute. Yes, this is not required. And then basically, I can say my arg1 is arg of 0 is basically the object itself. Arg of 0 is also arg of 0. And I need to have like condition. I need to check the length. If the length of arg is greater than 1, then I would be doing this. Else we're saying all this equals to none. Okay, so this is also working, and this could be a little dirty way of implementing the same thing, but this is something like quite generalized, and you can pass as many arguments you want. It's up to your implementation. What do you want to pass and how do you want to pass? If you do not pass anything, then also the same thing would be called, and accordingly the thing would be done. And if you pass something, then also the same method would be called, and accordingly it will initialize the value. So the implementation of the same thing, but here we are doing it with star arcs. Okay. So if the length is more than one, by default, the self would be there. So one argument would be there by default. Fine. And if it is more than one argument, then what we are doing, we are setting the value. So arg of 0 is basically your self or your object. Dot name equals to arg of 0 dot address equals to arg of 2, and arg of 0 dot mobile equals to arg of 3. Else, if this is not the case, if no argument is passed, then we would simply say arg of 0 dot name equals to arg of 0 dot address equals to arg of 0 dot mobile equals to none. Okay. So this is how we can do this. So this is about your constructor. Is this clear to all? Now, what we need to do, we need to start about inheritance. And I hope you all already know about inheritance. You have studied object-oriented programming. Inheritance is basically for software reusability. You want to reuse your code so that you can get the properties of one class into another class, or you can get the features of one class into another class. For example, I want to have a student class. Now, student is a person. Likewise, employee is also a person. So what can be done? Whatever common things we have, we take those common things up. We make one class, say a person class, which would be having the common things like name, address, mobile, and so on. And then we can have a student. So student also is a person. So student must be having a name, student must be having an address, student must be having a contact number. Likewise, employee is also a person. Employee must be having a name. Employee also must be having the address. Employee also must be having the contact number or the mobile number. Okay. So that way, what can be done, since we have these features of having a name, address, and mobile number into one class, so why to redefine those features into another class? What we can do, we can inherit these features from this class into another class. Now, from where we are inheriting is called the base class, and into which we are inheriting is called the derived class. Okay. Now, in Python, whenever you want to define a derived class, how to define it? The definition is quite simple. Of the def keyword, so def, and then the name of a class, for example, student, and I want the student to be inherited from person. So again, a very simple syntax. We have parentheses like this, the way we have our function, and then inside the parentheses, we simply write the name of a base class. So the name of my base class is person. So I would be writing person, then colon, and then the definition of the student class. Okay, it is as simple as that. So if you see here, you had only one class without inheriting from anything. So we did not have opening and closing parentheses. Here we put the opening and closing parentheses because we want student class to be derived from another class called person. That's why we are writing it like this. Likewise, you can derive a class from multiple base classes. So that is called your multiple inheritance. So you have multiple inheritance in Python. You have multi-level inheritance. You have hierarchical inheritance. So all inheritances are possible in Python. So you can have class 1, comma, then you can have base class 2, comma, you can have base class 3, and so on. So this way you can have multiple base classes for one derived class, okay, with the help of comma, comma, comma. So all the properties of the base class would come into the derived class. So whatever you have in the person class, all those are now available to the student class. Obviously, if something is not private to a person class. So whatever is private to the person class, that won't be available to the student class. But now into this definition, we do not have anything private. So all those things are, you can say, public. So all those things are available to the student class. And here we have the definition of the student class. Now we'll be defining the constructor of the student class. So I say dunder init. And student say roll number apart from name, address, and mobile number. So I would be saying roll number equals to none. Let it be default. And then some marks or percentage. So let me call it CGPI or SGPI, something like that. SGPI. Having a default value as none. And then what I'm doing, I would be setting them so self dot roll number equals to RN, and then self dot SGPI equals to SGPI. Okay, done. And then I want to get the values of students, so I say get stud. Here I would be returning. What I want to return, I don't want the object of the student class to explicitly call the getval of the base class. So I would be getting the values of the base class over here. So I want to return roll number, I want to return name, I want to return address, mobile, and then SGPI, something like that. So I would be saying self dot roll number. Yes, and then second would be self dot name, and then third would be self dot address, then self dot mobile, and then finally self dot SGPI. Okay, let me follow the syntax. And now here, instead of defining the persons, okay, we have some person, let it be there. And now let me define a student. So S equals to student without some values, and then S1 equals to student with some values, and those values are suppose what we are passing to student. We are passing. Now we have some problem over here. If you see carefully, what's happening that in the student class, you are setting the roll number and SGPI. Fine. But we are setting the name of a student. We are not setting the address of a student, and we are not setting the mobile number of a student. That we need to do here. Fine. How we will be doing that? Roll number I am asking, SGPI am I expecting over here. Likewise, I should accept name also. Na? So n equals to say none. And then I should expect say none and default value. And then I should accept mobile number also. So m equals to none. Now, when we are getting these values, so how we need to do that, or how we need to set those values. So in Python, when I'm having the values over here, what I need to do, I need to call the constructor of my base class. inside the constructor of my derived class. I repeat, I need to call the constructor of the base class inside the constructor of the derived class. How to call? Use the base class name. The base class name is person. So I would be writing person dot dunder init, and then what I will be passing, what I need to pass, I need to pass the name, and then I need to pass the address A, and then I need to pass mobile. So now the object, this object would be setting these values. Let us display the values as dot get something. And print s1 dot get stud. Let's see what's happening, whether it is getting done or we are having some issue. We are getting some issues. Student missing one required positional argument person. So class student person. Not deaf means what? Oh. Thank you. Wow. Class keyword. Gets, oh. Hmm. Student object has no attribute to roll number. Where is the student object? Self dot roll number equals to rn. Self dot sgpi equals to sgpi. Fine, that is fine. Why are you saying it does not have roll number? How can it say like that? Hmm. Type object person has no attribute. Wow. I'm typing 3 underscores instead of 2. Non-type object has no attribute name. Say name, where is name? N equals to none. I think that star arcs creating some issues. So let me explicitly have it like this. This should not happen then also. Self dot name equals to n. Self dot address equals to a. Self dot mobile equals to m. So our init got all these values, and then I'm saying person dot init n a m. Dot name equals to n. Oh, why this error is coming? Let me. It is coming because of these things. Okay, no issues. And I need to pass yourself or what? Yes. But it is setting to all none, none, none because we are not passing any values. So two objects are created and both the objects are created for no values. So now let me pass some values. First is the roll number, then name. So let me say roll number is 19CO01. We are running out of time. Second is name. Say, I don't know name, so Muskan. And then third one is address. I say Mumbai. Let me call it Panvel. And then fourth one is mobile number. This one. And then CGPI, suppose 8.9. Am I done? Five values, roll number, name, address, mobile, and GPI. That's it. Done. So it's working. Okay. So this is how you can initialize the object of a derived class, and you can pass on the values for the instance variables of the base class also. Okay. See here carefully. What we are doing, we were missing this part. We were not passing the self. We need to pass the self. Inside the constructor of a derived class, the instance variables of the derived class, and then to initialize the instance variable of the base class. You have some instance variable of the base class coming from the base. So to initialize those instance variables of the base class, you need to call the constructor of the base class. How to call the constructor of the base class? Base class name dot, and then the constructor name. Constructor name is dunder init. What will be passing? The first argument is the self, this self. So basically, this is a reference of the derived class object. I repeat, this is a reference of the derived class object. Okay. And then the variables. Which variables? The base class instance variables. You want to set the base class instance variable. So whatever value you want to pass, those values you can pass over here. Okay. And this is what getting done over here. The first object, this one without any values for the student. The second object, this one with some values for the, and this is how it is getting done. This is the first student without any value, so all none, and this is the second student with the set values. Okay, so this is how you can make use of inheritance, and this is how you can make use of constructor in inheritance. Then I said you can have multiple inheritance, you can have multi-level inheritance, you can have hybrid inheritance. So all those inheritances are possible in Python. Only one thing you need to remember, that how to initialize the instance variables of the base class. The base class instance variables which are coming into the derived class, how to initialize those instance variables by calling the constructor of the base class with the help of base class name. And then the first object or the first argument should be the self, and then the argument for the instance variables of the base class. Okay, so we stop here today. Is there any query from your side? Please let me know.